Raquel, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You weren't expecting to be on camera, but you're on camera nonetheless. Cool. So yes, thanks for coming by and sharing your story with me. You and I were speaking on the couch earlier, and you're telling me some amazing stories. And what I got from you is your passion. You are very passionate for helping underprivileged a community. I don't want to say too much, but like your story is kind of growing up in the Boyle Heights area and then moving out to the suburbs. And what I found was interesting is the difference you saw there. You wanted to kind of focus more in the east side, Boyle Heights area to build up that community. Yeah. Your story is, can you share a little bit about like what you're telling me about the family business and
definitely. So my story, my family owns Zamora Brothers, which is a business in the Boyle Heights, started in the Boyle Heights community by my grandfather in 1970. So we've been in business for 54 years, making the best carnitas and chicharrones in LA. Started working as a very young girl. I was 7 years old. They used to put a little milk box, and I used to charge and wash dishes and sweep and mop, and just long hours, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So it was just, I really didn't have a normal childhood. I was parentified, didn't hang out with a lot of kids. It was adults. But that was definitely foundational. I learned how to earn an honest dollar through hard work. And, I grew up with a single mom, but my grandfather was like my father figure. She did move us out into the suburbs. She moved us out to Chino Hills, and but I kept coming. We would come back and go to school in Boyle Heights until she really plucked us out and kept us in public schools in Chino Hills.
What grade was this? You were saying like third?
I was in the fourth grade. Yeah.
Okay.
And on the weekends, still work at the family business, from sun up to sundown. So, I think that my perspective in life was like, at a very young age, I got to see the inequalities, right? And the differences between communities. So I would see like things that really would strike me and things that are like really unforgettable.
You have an example?
I do have an example. I remember I was maybe like 8-9 years old, and this woman walked into the business, and we sell carnitas, chicharrones, pan dulce, cheese, milk, everything. And she walked in maybe with 4 or 5 kids. And at that time, the food stamps were like in these little booklets.
Coupon books, yeah.
Yeah, the coupon books, right? Mm-hmm. The dollar ones were brown. I remember the $5 ones were purple, and the green ones were $10. I even remember that. But anyhow, she only had the brown dollar ones, right? And she bought milk and cheese. And I remember one of our employees walked out with the pan dulce. And one of her kids said, "Mom, I want a pan dulce." And she took it out, and she's like, "I don't have enough money." And I remember that. And I was like, huh. And I got a bag, and I filled it up. I'm like, "Here you go, you can have it."
Oh, wow.
And she walked out, and I remember. And that just always, gave me, like, perspective. Like, and I always, like, I'm pretty privileged. I have access to the food I want. I go to a different community and sleep, where like I knew that a lot of community members probably wouldn't sleep because it was like a lot of violence in the community, helicopters, noises, sirens, all of that. So I think I had like a guilt.
A guilt?
Yeah, I felt guilty.
It's interesting because perspective is everything. The way that you look at the world really shapes your reality.
Yeah.
People do different things to kind of help broaden their perspective, like travel for instance. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can just, if you've ever went down to like south of the border, like to Tijuana, you will see like the first time I went there, I was like 18 and I was just going to go party with my friends down there. Mm-hmm. But on the way to Rosarito, we stopped in Tijuana, TJ, and there was a little girl, maybe 3 years old, selling gum. Comes up to me, it's like chicle. And I was like right there, I'm like, wow. Yeah. I'm like, wow, what a difference of the community I live in and then the community down here. Right. And so there's a level of like gratitude where personally, I don't know if I felt guilty, but I knew that I have some sort of responsibility to make the most out of my life because people don't get that.
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. So I think that's why I chose the career path and journey that I chose. I mean, I did finish high school in Chino Hills, and then I moved right back to Boyle Heights. I moved in with my grandfather, still worked, every weekend at the family business, and, whenever I could help. I attended Mount St. Mary's College. I thought I was going to go to law school, but my last year, while at Mount St. Mary's, my grandfather passed away, and I took a turn. I came into education. I taught at Roosevelt High School where my parents met. I taught dropout recovery classes, ESL to adults, and I just fell in love with education and giving back, specifically to the Boyle Heights community. And that was just like my passion, my journey. What I found was that a lot of my students that were in dropout recovery classes, they were failing classes not because they did not have the skills or they were brilliant, but life happened to them, whether it be they were, getting evicted, somebody lost their job, somebody passed away, somebody got deported. And at the time, LAUSD was laying off teachers left and right, and I kept getting pink slips, which means that you're going to get laid off. And after a couple pink slips, I said, I need to go back to school. And instead of getting, a master's in education, I went ahead and went to do a master's in social work at USC because I wanted to, help our students, but outside of the school, whatever it may be, like mental health help and stuff like that. So I did therapy for victims of crime. I did case management for foster care. Still kept teaching until I segued into health and human services for LAUSD. I'm specifically now, I'm part of the pupil services and attendance unit. So I do kind of like help our counselors and our students with the barriers that impede them from coming to school every day. And what you find is that it's students who there's definitely mental health, housing instability. During the pandemic, a lot of breadwinners passed away, and that really changed the dynamics of a lot of family units. The communities that were hit hardest were South LA, Southeast LA, East LA, Boyle Heights, a lot of essential workers. I remember specifically one student at Fremont, her father used to work for Farmer John. And I remember, I'm like, oh, Farmer John, because my family business, we've always bought in our pork from Farmer John. The father was the breadwinner, and she had siblings. She was brilliant. She got accepted to UCLA during the pandemic. Her father passed away, and she didn't go. Because she had to help. She had to help her family. So stories like that, it's like, oh, it's hard. But that's what even gives me more passion to keep working, to help these working class families to follow their dreams, whatever that may be. I have students that are like, Miss, college wasn't for me, but I got into this trade and I make this much money. I'm like, oh my God, you make so much more than me. That's amazing. I'm so happy for you. Yeah. And I get invited to weddings and baptisms and stuff like that. So that just warms my heart because I get to hear from them years later.
Yeah, that's amazing. The girl that you said that lost her was it her father, her father, and had to stay. Imagine if there was some support for her and somebody else was able to kind of like watch over her family and things like that, and have her not need to make the sacrifice.
Right. And that story was like, it came to me because I didn't work with that student directly, but it was like the counseling unit, and we were all kind of zooming in.
Yeah.
This was happening like the heat of the pandemic, but imagine that she didn't have to make that tough decision, and
That's what's brilliant about your work, to be able to like help give people the whether it's the education or the therapy, to understand what is going on with these troubled youths who are maybe victims of crime or in the foster unit. They have a really rough life, and like you said, it's not that they're not brilliant or have low level IQs. It's just life happens to them and they have to survive. And a lot of the times when you don't have someone being like, hey, you could probably just like, get a job at this place, or have even like a positive role model that is just a standard typical thing that most people take for granted. They're out in the streets, they're maybe committing crimes themselves. They're passing that trauma onto other people as well. It's just like what people do, past trauma, hurt people, healed people, heal people. Right. And so I think it's amazing the sort of work that you're doing. You're trying to bring that healing to other people as well. And I love that about you.
Yeah, thanks. That definitely drives me. It's something that I've always wanted, and I think it definitely has to do with my upbringing and the foundation. Like I said, seeing the difference in communities, and just going back and doing the work to keep helping others, because then they end up helping others and uplifting.
Somebody did that for me, and now I want to do that for somebody else.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
It works.
Yeah, and I tell my students, patience, and I'm like, that's called the human spirit.
The human spirit.
The human spirit, just to keep lifting people up.
Yeah. You were also talking about now you're trying to get into therapy using horses.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's my next goal. I really, really want to start doing equine therapy. Equine therapy for families who have experienced trauma, using the horse as a modality. Usually equine therapy is, for affluent families, they have access, and I just really want to bring that service to the Eastside communities.
Yeah.
And my goal is to get a horse and stable it in probably like the Pico Rivera area, because there's a huge equestrian community, and be able to have families from the Eastside come and do equine therapy. I mean, I think it blends the mental health, the cultural aspect, all together, and that's something that I'm very, very passionate
when you were
about.
telling me about that, I was like, that sounds like a great idea, like a mixing of two worlds, because again, it's almost like a lack of opportunity for people who don't have money.
Right.
Yeah. And so bringing those sort of opportunities really helps the community as a whole, like whatever community, whether it's Boyle Heights or whether it's Alhambra, people lifting up other people helps everybody. Because those people who are, say, down in the gutter, or like down on their luck, victims of crime, it's very few of those stories who are sort of like the rags to riches, where these people are so fed up with their situation that they have to find a way out. Those are special cases from what I understand. Most of the people continue on in that sort of vein of life. So that's wonderful. I've never been around a horse, but I've heard stories about like the horse kind of like reflects. It's almost like like a mirror of yourself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about it a little bit more about the, I don't know, benefits of using a horse as a modality for these folks.
Well, one, I mean, some people are tactile learners, right? And it's soothing, you know. And then you're right, you know, the horses, I've heard like it's a reflection of the human and that connection, right? I think that's why it works well. But, you know, again, there's not a lot of access to people of color to get those type of services, or even to experience or be close to horses.
Yeah.
Like in the LA community, let's say, like in Mexico, it's the ranchos, you know, yes, there's cows, there's, you know, horses, and it's like they're there, that you clean them, you know, it's work, whatever, you know. But for us, it's like that in the city, it's kind of like that's a luxury. Mm-hmm. It's a luxury to have access to a horse.
100%.
Yeah. Look at you just described, like you've never been really around horses.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah.
I think one time when I was a little baby, I remember taking a picture with the horse. And I had like a little cowboy hat on.
A lot of us have that picture, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, I don't remember this or why I was doing it, but like, I guess it was cool to like be around a horse or whatever. But I heard one comedian, her name is Whitney Cummings, and she is real big into animals, and she uses horses as almost like a therapy for herself. So I'm like, huh. And when you told me about that, I'm like, I've heard that before.
Equine therapy. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest issues that you see with folks who are like victims of crimes or in the foster care system? What is sort of a common mentality that they have? Like, what are their issues? Why do they do the things that they do?
Well, people who have gone through trauma does something to the individual, the spirit, the brain, how they operate, how they see things. They're on survival mode. So, you know, there's healthy coping mechanisms and not so healthy coping mechanisms. And it's also like generational trauma, community trauma.
100%.
There's a lot of things that play into why people do what they do, or how people act, or how people, you know, function. You know, I think that a lot of time there's like systemic issues, right, that have people do things that, you know, they have to do what they have to do to survive.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then access to information, you know, access to a role model, a mentor, someone that cares, you know. With foster youth, I mean, when I worked with foster youth, there were amazing, amazing young girls with just a really messed up situation, and it had nothing beyond their control, right? You know, parents' mistakes or what have you, in which they would be removed from their families and put in foster care. They don't want to be there, they want to be with their family, but at the same time, it was things that they couldn't go back, right? So I think it's like layers of stuff that make people act or think or do things.
I understand that. Yeah, they're coming from history of trauma, generational trauma, where maybe they're part of a single family. Maybe they saw some abuse in their household. Mm-hmm. Maybe there was neglect. That's really wild. And the absence of information or a mentor doesn't help the situation either.
Right.
Because it's like you don't have anybody to model. As human beings, we model our environment, you know, and it's so simple as just finding somebody who has done what you want to do, and then being like, okay, I know this person. They're not like too much more different than me. Maybe they do this, this, and this different. It's like that becomes then real for the person. It's like, oh, I can do this too. But that's where that mentor comes in. Turn on this light.
Maybe.
All right. Okay, there it goes.
But yeah, no, you're right. So like, let's say generational trauma, neglect, you know, and you have that when you're growing up in childhood, and really it manifests in adulthood and in relationships. I'll give you an example. Children who their parents are emotionally not present, or, you know, because they're working and they're trying to make ends meet, and, you know, not probably very affectionate, maybe because their parents weren't affectionate with them, that child will grow up and it's really twisted sometimes. They are attracted subconsciously to people who are emotionally unavailable.
Yeah.
And they don't have strong attachment. So there's anxious attachment, like that you really want to attach to somebody and you're very, very affectionate. And then there's like an avoidant attachment where it's very hard to have deep, long connection to people, because it's just like, oh, you're going to leave anyway too. Like it's going to be too hurtful to attach to you as a partner. So I'll just do enough, the bare minimum, you know? And then like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's interesting how that can be someone's childhood, and then it comes up subconsciously in partners you choose, or what happens. And then you're like trying to heal, and you're trying to get this information. You're like, this all makes sense now. This is like, oh my gosh, my family.
Totally.
Yeah, it makes sense now. And then, you know, it's interesting.
Interesting to say the least. It's mind-blowing to understand your trauma and to understand why you do the things that you do, and a big detriment to folks who are coming from areas where they don't have a lot of education. Then you don't know about seeing a therapist. You don't know about getting a mentor. You don't know about these things that could literally change your life. And so I forgot the point that I was trying to make, but
well, like mental health and the whole Latino community, it's like, you know, when I was starting my career, it's like, you're gonna be a therapist? Like, why? Don't you have your own problems? Like, we don't need a therapist. No necesitamos psicólogas. No estamos locos. And it's like, it's not about being local. It's about just, you know, I'm having a difficult time. I can't talk to my family about it because we're all in this same problem. I need somebody who has a different perspective, who can hear me out, validate me, and teach me healthy coping skills. And whether that be, you know, finding, you know, passion that I might have, whether it be hiking or swimming or something, and that's where I can dive into, and it's healthy. And it's not like, well, I'm just going to go into trying a drug or alcohol or, you know,
a relationship,
things like
100%.
that. So, yeah, and it's different now, because now mental health is great across all cultures. There's more awareness, and I think it's like amazing. Social media has helped. I think providing psychoeducation, it's talked about it in the schools. You know, sometimes I go and visit schools, and I'm like, oh, well, what do you do when you feel angry? I breathe, miss. I blow, you know, a flower, and I'm like, these are all therapeutic skills that they're teaching at the schools.
That's fantastic.
And I think it's fantastic, and it feels great. And I'm like, yeah, like, you don't have to punch the wall. You can just blow the flower away. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and it virtually does the same thing to your mind as, say, punching a wall or blowing a flower. It's almost like a release.
Yeah, but there's a healthy one and a not so healthy one.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's teaching the healthy coping skills. It's teaching about healing. And it's okay to feel angry. we all feel angry at times. It's okay to feel sad.
Yeah.
But how do we become unstuck? Because like the power of your thoughts, the power of your brain, it is powerful.
100%.
So powerful. So I reiterate that to the kids that I work with, the counselors that I work with, whether they're, or administrators or anybody come around. I'm like, this is all here.
Yep.
It's all right here.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah. And you're doing your part, Raquel, to educate and help out the communities and serve.
And serve. Yeah, I definitely like acts of service. That's always something that I think that I've always has been embedded in me, and I think I would see my family like always being of service, and I think it's very foundational to who I am now, right, as an adult. And now
Totally.
I teach it to my daughter, right?
Yeah.
I only have one daughter. Like, you have to be of service. You have to help out, like, and I see her doing it, and sometimes like I'm like, I love it, and and she's like, I did this and I helped this, and I go, you know what, that's great. And I said, but you know what I'm more concerned about? What you do when I'm not watching, when I'm not around.
Yeah.
I said, when you do it in front of me, like, cool.
Yeah.
But when I'm not around, I want you to keep making the right choices and doing the right things and always helping.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like the seeds that you let, you leave behind to flower.
Totally.
And keep doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Raquel. I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your story. You're a beautiful person.
Thanks for having me.
Totally. My pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.